So hello everyone, welcome to the Technical Gupta YouTube channel. Today we will talk about the API versioning. Before understanding the API versioning, we should know about the API. So API stand for Application Programming Interface. So it is used to communicate between two applications. So if you are coming from the IT background, then you might heard this term, the API. So API is responsible to get data from the server. So in this video, we will talk about the API versions, the different type of API versions, and why we need that. So I have created a sample project in the .NET 8 using a web API template. So you can see my screen. So this is the user controller. So let's suppose I have exposed one API which has route API slash user, and for get method it is returning a users. So let's suppose it's returning a user which has ID and name as a property. So ID will be one, name is a John Doe. So what my client needed, so he asked me, hey Ayush, I want email also in the property of the API. So can you do that? So to accept his request, so I have created the new API which is a version 2 and added the additional property. So you can see over here, so I am supporting two versions. So version 1 be the base version and version 2 will be the upgraded version. So why we are keeping this version? So let's suppose I have a 20 clients. So only one client asked me to get additional property in the user API. So I will create the version 2 endpoint, and rest of other clients can use the version 1. So this is the main concept behind the API versions. So let's talk about what are different type of a API version. So in the REST standard, we can have four type of a API version. So first is a URI versioning. So URI stand for URL. So as you can see in the route, there is a API slash v version API version. So here it will be v1 slash users or v2 slash users. So when it's a v1, it automatically map to this API method. When it is a v2, it will map to the version 2. Okay, so that means with the URL versioning, we get the API version detail in the URL. But we have another kind of a API versioning, which is a query string, header, and media tag. So what are all these? So if you see the route is common, the API slash user, then how will the backend will know that the client need the v1 version or v2 version? So for this, we have created a parameter. Okay, so to support the API version, I have added the default services to the .NET container. So I have configured in the startup project. So I have added the add API versioning. So default version will be the one, and you can see the API version reader. So here I am using four type of a API versions. So one is a query. So if in the query parameter I will pass version, then it will read that. Then again URL will stand for v1 and v2. Then there is a header API version. So I need to pass this header. So based upon that, it will know like whether one version 1 or version 2 is required. So based upon the media type means you are passing as a in the accept header. So you see the version. So these are the input parameters. So in this method, it will read that parameter and based upon that automatically map to the either version 1 or version 2. So let's test our endpoint. So first concept is the URL versioning. So if I am using as v1 slash user. So it's returning id and name. So if I use the version v2, then it will return id, name, additional property, email. So it's up to the client whatever they needed. So if they need the v1 version, they can use v1, and if they need a updated version, so they can use the v2 endpoint. So let's talk about the query string API version. So here I'm passing the version parameter. Okay, so let's test the version 1. So version 1 is returning this, then update the version 2. So in the query we are reading this version parameter, so that we have configured over here, like to read the version parameter. Let's talk about the header API version. So in header, if we pass this X API version, then it will read from that. So let's suppose I have added this key X API version, so it's returning the v1, and if I'm passing 2, it's returning the updated version. So this is the what we call header type. And in the last we have the media type. So in the accept application slash JSON, if you pass the version 1, it will return the version 1, and if you pass the version 2, it will return the version 2 API. So there are total 4 ways by this you can configure your application to respond based upon the user inputs. So mostly most of the people use this technique, which is a URL segmentation, because in the URL you have a v1 v2, so it will clearly make a differentiation between the endpoints. But in others you have to pass either the query string, or you have to pass the headers, or in the accept. So it's up to you how you want to configure your application. So hope you like the video, and if you have any question, so you can ask me in the comment section. So I have created this project in the .NET 8, and as of now it's a latest framework for the .NET. So I have provided the sample project, so you can check the link if you want to download this project. So thank you all. Bye.